Okay. I will increase your lowest quiz grade by 2 points. Okay.
2 points.
Which is pretty good.
Complain about that, Markel. What? If you get 2 out of 4, I mean, you aced the quiz then.
Once we get to the economics portion of this
If you go to,
that's
right, the exchange portion, what do I have to give up to get that?
You must learn about
If
incentives.
you go to, I mean, my God, I'm asking you to go have a good time and you get extra credit for it. Okay, don't even talk to me. Okay. Okay. So you go to the Robinson Film Center, and it's happening in different places downtown this weekend. It's the Louisiana Film Prize. Okay, they're giving a big prize to, and tonight they're giving a big prize to the winning band. Okay, so if you buy the ticket for this weekend, you get to go tonight to see the bands, if you're over 21. Okay. But the film prize, anybody can go to the film prize, and they're short films. I think they're each like no more than 10 minutes or something like that, maybe a little longer. And you watch 2 different groups in 2 different sort of time slots places. You can do one right after the other. You might have to change the location, and then you vote afterwards for the best ones. Okay, I think best actress and actor and director maybe a little bit too. And it's really fun. It's really cool. They're all made in Louisiana. A lot of them are made locally in Shreveport. You'll no doubt recognize some Centenary people or Shreveport people in there. And it's just a lot of fun to talk about some artsy, films, cutting edge, films. I didn't get that. Did you get that? Well, I think I got it. I think it was about this and that. Oh yeah, okay. So it's fun that way. If you go and then you write a paragraph on complexity, one friggin' paragraph. If you write a paragraph on how some film or something, maybe the whole thing together, but probably some film related to complexity, emergence of order, something like that. Okay? One film. Concentrate on one film.
Yes, what is happening on Sunday?
I don't know. Go look it up. I think it's maybe Friday night and Saturday night, but there might be a Sunday matinee thing. There might be. There might be. Darielle.
So I don't exactly understand how to relate this to.
Talk to me after class. Yeah. But I'll bet today you'll get a little bit more of it.
I hope so.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Michelle.
So what times was it? Was it like Friday? You said Friday night?
It's
Saturday night?
different times. It's probably starting at 5 o'clock tomorrow night. They're showing different slots all the way up till maybe midnight. You got to go to the film site and check it out.
Right.
Louisiana Film Prize, LA Film Prize. It's a great thing for Shreveport. It's the 3rd year in a row that they've done it. They only thought they'd do it once, but it was so fun that they ended up, they kept doing it. Mainly Gregory Hallenberg giving money towards it. Okay, ready guys? Let's do that quiz. Okay, question number 1. Ready? Here we go. Cover your answers. Eyes up here, or on your eyes up here.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm not looking at you. Koch's article, or Koch's article, let's say it's Koch, was primarily about to make one point, Koch cites the example of patients who have Koch argues that one critical quality of what he is trying to explain, right, so it's one of those things, right, one critical quality of it is Koch points out that for what he is trying to explain, the cerebellum, the little brain at the back of the brain, is okay, that's good. Turn over, please. Okay, it was primarily about what?
Consciousness.
Consciousness. to make one point, he cites examples of patients who have yes. I hate it when that happens. Find the difficulty. Conk argues that one critical quality when he's trying to explain is information integration. Conk points out that for what he is trying to explain, the cerebellum, little brain, is irrelevant. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Won't be around.
Guys? Yep. Okay. You guys ready for a ride today? We are going to roll. We are going to roll. Okay, today, our inner head is banging. Guess head banging sort of out sort of yesterday, but yeah. But I do think there's something about rhythm to consciousness. And there, if you were interested in this, if you were a neuroscience person, right, and you wanted to do, or psych, or something like that, and you wanted to do your paper on consciousness, there's more than Koch who's written about it. Now, he's a very neuroscience-y guy, he's a very anatomy guy, but there's other people that have written on it that are more from the psychological perspective. One person is all about these sort of the waves that sort of pulse through the brain and that are used for temporal markers, sort of like a beat in a song. And without that, you can't tell what's happened as much. So that's sort of critical to consciousness. All right, next Tuesday, we do It's Not English, it's English in other words. It's how you speak the language more than any official language. And then media and sort of the people's mic. I'm making a pun there. You guys know what the people's mic is. You may remember from intro, but we'll be talking about more the broader social level. We'll be starting to get sociological a little bit at that point. Okay. So let's review first of all. When we last left off, we were talking about aesthetics and aesthetic perception, right? And the idea that what is aesthetically pleasing? What's the sort of basic thing that's aesthetically pleasing? You read about it. Well, beauty is aesthetically pleasing, and why is beauty aesthetically pleasing? If you think about what is beautiful, you guys know about faces, for example. I don't know if we've read about that, but about symmetry, the symmetry of faces. Symmetrical faces are more attractive. They're rated as more attractive by people objectively. Or I did my dissertation sort of on this insight. I was sort of running with this, was that average faces tend to be rated more attractive. Now, why might that be, given what we were talking about, to average faces? Why would we like to look, and even infants like to look at faces that tend to be more symmetrical or closer to some sort of average?
Because it's not a sign of equality, genetic equality.
Yep, that's true, but that would suggest they're programmed sort of to dislike deformity. And it may not be something that specific.
Maybe they're easier to process, because if they're different, then it's distracting.
Yeah.
Different
Easier to process, quicker to process, quicker to realize. That's a face. That's a face. Nothing wrong with that face. Nothing wrong with that face. Right? Yeah. So it's information processing is what we were talking about before. And we were talking about how ordering is basic to us because it makes it easier to process it. After you've cleaned your closet, right? When you open your closet, it's really easy to get stuff and right, to process where things are. And so we order what's happened to us. Just like, the cave people are painting features of their lives. You guys are painting features of your lives when Wes is describing to Maddie what happened at the bar down there, and sort of, it's the same thing. It's cave painting, It's putting it in order, what these kinds of people, it's that kind of bar, etc. It's sort of categorizing things and putting it into order as we talk with each other, right? Like they're doing there at Shimmer College. and maybe think as we think we may order too. So that's where we're going. It's this. Okay. Let's remember some things. I'm going to emphasize something here about sort of key ingredients to making things become more complex and more ordered and more computationally efficient, if you will. The rise of complexity and what facilitates it. Okay, this is what we talked about at the very beginning of the course. We mentioned some things that facilitate the rise of complexity, the development of complexity. You can think about what makes a good garden, what facilitates a garden growing, or a community, or, I don't know, solar system, something like that. For life's emergence, as we know it, right, we talked about this. Well, a planet needs to be a certain distance from the sun for our kind of life. And we talked about gas versus solid versus liquids. Well, glass, liquid versus solids. And what's nice about liquid? Did we talk about what's sort of nice? Why sort of liquid better than gas? And you may remember I was talking with. That's right, Maddie.
Particles moving about.
Yeah, particles move about. That's right. They circulate. You may remember I talked to. I think I mentioned this to Desjardins. How's a solid? He said, "Oh, that's really good, but you can't get them to move, right? But they're right there meeting, and they'll start to interact after a while. So the inner core of stars, things like that. But that leads us to communication, media, and forums for interaction in general. They're sort of one and the same. In a garden, right? What kind of soil is good? What is the soil like? You know, what kind of soil is really good? You guys know if you were to just sort of get different kinds of soil, and some people make their own soil, right, for a garden. You know how they make their own soil? With compost, right? They put fruits and vegetables in there and everything like that and biodegrades, and that stuff is really rich with nutrients. It's dense with nutrients, and so there's more of a chance that it'll stimulate the plant growth. And that's an interaction sort of medium, communicating the nutrients. For art's emergence, okay, we just finished talking about and looking at that contemporary art in Paris, right? So for art to emerge and really take on a lot of momentum and energy where people are paying attention to it and where you can go to those places and you'll find really good art. You might need the art community to be a little distant from things that don't share information with it. It needs to sort of be separate from things that are competing with it. And so cities are sort of nice for that. Cities allow things to sort of ferment by packing a lot of artists around each other, in a sense. It's communication, media, and forums for interaction. So things are encouraged to relate to each other and strike up sort of relationships and synergies. Emergence of consciousness, of reflective, critical thinking, where you're thinking about what your senses are experiencing. And you're distinguishing you from other things, and you've got a subjective experience. You're aware of yourself being different from your environment. That may be separating our attention. And Koch talks about this, Christoph Koch talks about this, separating our attention from what? What do we want to separate our attention from that helps us think, focus? And you guys are studying. Maybe it's like this. These days I'm turning off the radio in the kitchen when the family comes into the kitchen and people are starting to turn on the radio because then I can focus a little bit more on what they're saying. So it's the environment a little bit is what we want to separate our attention from. Focus on our thoughts. not constantly be monitoring. Sensory input. If you're thinking about the lecture right now, if you're thinking about how is he going to relate consciousness to complexity, and not say how your foot feels, because we dropped the table on it earlier, Wes. Sorry about that. It's a little guilty. Thank God it's not bleeding all over the place. But he's not thinking about that. He's able to concentrate on the lecture, right? Cutting off that sensory input. Some people are really good at that, right? They can really focus. Well, you might need some sort of communication media or medium set up that can allow you to focus. Some sort of forum for interaction where your memories can mix with certain sensory input that you want to admit in. Like as you're swimming, you know, and you're thinking about a certain form, and you're shutting out the other stuff, and you're remembering when you swam really well, and you're thinking about that form, you're able to shut out the other stuff about the pain and the agony and stuff like that, or the people yelling, or you know what you're going to have for lunch afterwards. So the thalamus, is that how you pronounce it? I'm not a neuroscience guy, y'all. So you know, rely on y'all helping me out on this. Thalamus might be mediating admission of the sensory input. It looks like it might be doing something like that into the cerebral cortex, and that's where the party is. That's where everybody's mixing and matching and trying to get to know new people, as it were, and seeing who they click with, matching up sort of who makes sense to match up with in a new sort of way. Given the new sensory input, what new connections can we make that sort of go together, that make sense? Okay. So, that's where we're going. We're going to talk about consciousness now and some of the things that he talks about. All right, so what is consciousness? How would you guys describe that now? What is consciousness?
Being aware of yourself.
Yeah, maybe being aware of yourself.
It's kind of like the sensation of having your brain on record. You know what I mean by that? It's like, you know, you're conscious whenever you have the ability to recall things that happened to you during that period of time.
Yeah, I like that. I hadn't thought about that, but that's sort of true. As opposed to
Being blackout drunk.
being blackout drunk.
There it is.
I guess I don't think one is aware. I don't know. Is one aware when you're drunk?
You're walking around.
Are you
but you're
aware
not
that you're
conscious.
not on record?
Probably.
But I
not.
guess you don't need to be aware that you're not on record. You don't need to be aware that you're not conscious to be unconscious.
So,
Right.
Well, I mean,
So
your
that would be
brain's
a
functioning
contradiction.
differently then.
What's that?
Your brain's like functioning differently when you're blackout drunk, so.
Yeah, it
I don't know
is.
if it's like the same
Yeah,
comparison.
yeah. But I'm sort of trying to put it on a continuum of where you're really aware, oh, I'm going to remember every bit of this, to where no, I wasn't paying attention. Sort of like when you're reading sometimes and you're tired.
You
you're
just
not
skim
really,
over it and you realize
yeah,
you didn't read any of it.
Exactly. Right. You're not very conscious of the reading. Yeah, so that's a nice definition. Any other thoughts on what consciousness means or what you associate with consciousness?
like being aware of yourself at more than just an instinctual level.
Yeah, more than just a sensate. Me hungry, me want food, the food tastes good. You're starting to look critically like, geez, I've had this food a lot lately. Maybe I should get something else or something. When's the last time I had a vegetable? You know,
I was reading a book by Turing, I think that's how you say his name.
Uh-huh.
And he was saying how it's kind of like understanding the reasoning behind something. Like if a dog jumps up on a couch, like it gets in trouble, and so it learns not to jump up there only because it gets in trouble. It doesn't learn that it's like messing up the fabric, but we know that's messing up the fabric. So kind of like understanding the reasoning behind actions, thoughts,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, piecing things together and sort of figuring out sort of causal relationships in your environment, making yourself aware of those things. Uh-huh. You think dogs are conscious of themselves and their sort of environment?
I mean, I think they're definitely aware of themselves, but I don't think they have reasoning other than like being hungry, being thirsty.
Yeah.
Besides that.
They don't really do critical thinking.
They don't do critical thinking. They don't examine their own behavior and say, that wasn't so good, let's try it this way.
I think they might. I really feel like
They might.
Like depending on the situation, sometimes in certain survival situations, yes, one might say that it's survival instinct, but like I've read cases of dogs like built like in like tsunami situations, building a type of house to live in, and then realizing that that house didn't necessarily work for that environment, and then redoing like another structure of a house.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I feel like
That's a good example,
yeah.
right? Adjusting to, right? Maybe that's sort of, well, I gotta make it again because my instinct tells me I need shelter, the shelter isn't working. But, yeah, Wes?
Something I think is interesting to think about is the separation of consciousness from language. Because, like, our ancestors didn't have actual language, but they still presumably had consciousness. They're the same as us, you know?
Yeah?
But that's the thing with animals is a dog can't think, you know, okay, I shouldn't jump on the couch because I could get in trouble. It's just like a collection of emotions and reactions.
Yeah. There's
That's
something
one.
bad about that couch.
Yeah.
I know there's something bad about it. I associate pain with it or something like that. A conditional source.
Exactly. I don't know. Just
But now, Wes, you said we did have consciousness before we had language.
I mean, having thought without language is difficult for us to conceptualize, but I think it's possible.
Yeah. Good. I think it is too. It wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
But it might be a little bit possible. So there's, speaking of dogs, right, and making this adjustment, I saw this paper given at a conference on play, and this graduate student, very smart graduate student, her dissertation may have been on this, but dogs and their philosophy of mind. Do they have a philosophy of mind? Are they thinking that other dogs are thinking? And as they interact with other dogs, are they making adjustments in their behavior because they're trying to get the other dog to read them? And she said, yeah, it does happen. You can see how they make an adjustment. So she talks about an example that she saw where a dog did the play signal, which is, yeah, like that. You're not smiling, but, and the other dog didn't see it. And the dog went up and moved over and went, like that. So I said, see, you know, they're making those adjustments. They're trying to communicate, and they're conscious of how their actions affect the environment and how they can adjust them. Yeah, so those are all, you know, good explorations of what consciousness might mean. According to us, according to Cox. See, guys, I'm putting you on camera there. That's right. I got all of y'all there. That's right. That's right. When we talk, okay? I might put it back like this just to show where we're going every once in a while. Okay, so for Koch, consciousness is something very sort of specific. He's following in this sort of pure science tradition of trying to specify exactly what it is and use observations to sort of pinpoint it. Consciousness as awareness.
What are you wearing? We don't get those yet.
Linda sent everybody a message, huh? She had to.
Who?
Linda.
Oh no, we do.
Of a differentiated state. So you're aware of yourself in each moment and how it's different. You're aware of moments and how they are different. And they're each, in a sense, inimitable. Now, what does it mean to have a moment or a state be inimitable? Inimitable. What's that mean? You guys know what inimitable means, right?
Imitating?
There's nothing else like it. You cannot imitate it. You cannot mimic it.
So what was the question?
So how is each moment in your existence inimitable? And you're
Happen again.
yeah, it will never happen again. Just like that, at least. I mean, you can't go back in time and say, I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to think about those exact same things. I'm going to just relive that moment. It'd be impossible, right? There's so many other things that are going on, such as other experiences that you've just had and just the texture of your life. And that's part of his point, is showing the complexity that goes into making identifiable states based on integrated information. The information is not just loose and unconnected. It's not piecemeal. it's integrated. You're using a lot of different variables to sort of create a picture. Things are connected to each other. And you're specifically going to sort of big important meanings and understandings. Okay. Other points from Koch. The more integrated he said his memories are, the more meaningful they become. Now, what do you think that means? The more integrated your memories are, the more meaningful those memories become.
Could it be like, you can relate to more than one instance, which means you have more feelings about it because it's integrated more than one. Saying there's a picture, and there's different people in the picture. You have different relationships with each person in the picture.
Right.
So that picture could mean different things to you. So it can be very
It could be very meaningful, depending on who's in the picture, right? And if those are meaningful people to you, if they're related to a lot of your experiences, maybe when the picture was taken, other things that you can connect to the picture, or maybe not even the picture, but as the picture frame, or, this was just before Hurricane Katrina hit right there. I was walking by and I took a picture of this mailbox and there was by accident, but I'm keeping it because of that, right? So it could be those kind of things too. Sure, it's those connections. And the more densely interconnected they are, the more meaningful they would be. Now, I've got impact there, y'all, because impact is one of the variables that I've developed in my research. You're going to see it again. It's how interconnected something is. Okay, now here, this is in contrast to, right, integrated knowledge and integrated connections. And my impression is from reading this, now I'm not sure, I haven't had as much neuroscience as some of y'all. I haven't had any neuroscience officially. But the cerebellum wiring, as it were, it doesn't sound like, correct me if I'm wrong, is as sort of web-like and sort of interconnected and densely interconnected. It's more like crystalline wirings. It's sort of more like sort of electrical wiring. And if you lose your cerebral cortex, but you still got your cerebellum, you can move around. Right? The puppet can still be controlled. Right? You could be a rock climber, he said. But you wouldn't be able to think about it, know about it, be conscious about it. So it's not a densely connected, interconnected things that are finding other connections and things like that. That's what the cerebral cortex is doing. The cerebellum is needed for movement, but not consciousness. That's one of his points. It's one of his points of evidence. And the quantity of information as well, and that relates to frequency and stability. Again, those are my three variables there. You'll see them again. How often you see something is its frequency. And that determines how meaningful it is to you, how much you know about it, how confident you are in it. But then how consistent it is to you over observations. That's stability, and that matters too. So neurons are sets of neurons that represent things that have impact and frequency and stability. You're going to be thinking about them more often, and they're going to be drawing more of your connections and your thinking. You're going to be seeking connections to them. Okay, now I'm going to give you some stuff. This is some wordy stuff, okay? But I feel empowered to give you extremely wordy slides now after Jardins gave you guys some wordy slides. And plus, I'm posting these, online, so you don't need to write this stuff down. And I want to walk you through some of his quotes from his book. And it's consciousness, but it's consciousness something something and complexity. And he refers to it, I think, explicitly in the title. Oh, and by the way, okay, so Christoph Koch, I don't know if you guys got any of his biography, but he ain't just any old guy who happens to be writing on consciousness and complexity. There's a lot of people out there who are doing that. In any discipline, they're using complexity to write. Okay, this guy wrote with, and this book was referred to me by some other dad of another soccer player during a soccer tournament right here in Shreveport. He's a medical guy. He's a doctor. He happened to know. Well, actually, if you're interested in that, Christoph Koch is a guy who writes a lot about medical neuroscience. Oh, really? Oh, okay, I'll check that out. I did. I'm reading up on who is this guy. He wrote a lot of his early career on consciousness with Francis Crick, right? Of Watson and Crick, right? Who discovered DNA. That's all. I mean, so this guy, you know, he's been there, right? He's up there. And then he's at a reputable university and all that. Sorry, I gotta correct something there. But it's a good read, this book. It's accessible. So if you were to want to write on that, this is one of the books that you'd use. Okay, so the role of affect, of feeling, he talks about. Now, affect is, do you feel positive or negative? Do you feel good or do you feel not so good? It's not a specific emotion necessarily. It can be sometimes, but usually affect is used in aesthetic terms. Do you like that? Is that pleasurable or do you not like that? Not, do you feel ashamed or angry or something like that. So the role of affect is significant here for Koch. He talks about that. He says, global disorders in consciousness, so like being in a coma or in a vegetative state or in a minimally conscious state, all those disorders involve damage to parts of the brain that are involved in feeling good, feeling bad, right? And liking things, not liking things. So there's something about liking and not liking things that's involved in consciousness. Neurons in the thalamus and cerebral cortex can't assemble far-flung neuronal coalitions, right? So if complexity class, you know, Demerath afternoon, Gold Dome building over here after lunch, a little sleepy, all those things, you know, put together. You can't do that apparently without involving affect. That could be because affect colors our understandings of things. The fact that arousal centers are needed for achieving consciousness, the fact that you need arousal to achieve consciousness, supports the idea that we need arousal for consciousness, for thinking, really. And that could be because we're aroused by achieving cognitive order by thinking. Now I'm going from Koch to me here, and sort of how I'm interpreting this. We're aroused by achieving cognitive order. We like to achieve cognitive order. And if you guys have been in intellectual discussions with each other once in a while, you know what I'm talking about. It can be an intoxicating thing to debate and argue and not fight, you know, but I mean, you're making your point, and aha, this is the point I want to make, aha, right? It feels good to fit it together. So if that's true, we may have thought ourselves into consciousness throughout our evolution. And we become more and more conscious, more and more aware, as we become more sensitive to how things feel and what it feels to create order. So that is, the more we're able to think, the more we feel aroused by connections, and the more space and time we give ourselves to, okay, the more space and time we'll want to give ourselves to mix and match stuff, to think about what goes with this. Why, you know, how can I get Demerath to give us an extra credit assignment this weekend? What could I do? What does he like? You know, what's going on this weekend? You know, why should he do something like that? That big meanie. And the more we give ourselves time to think about those things, and the more we use the thalamus to admit sensory input, thoughts, to admit sort of meanings into the party of what we're trying to focus on, what we're trying to attend to. Yeah, I got going on this metaphor here. I said, yeah, the more we use the thalamus to admit thoughts to the party, I'm thinking of Studio 54 at this point, that look like, or feel like, they can dance to the music that's being played. The music that's being played is extra credit assignment from Demerath. Okay, what would match with that? Okay, you know, why he needs to do it, he hasn't given us one yet, or this, or that. Okay. I don't know why it jams there. All right, now here's an interesting thing. I think you're going to like this. Okay. Evolutionary psychology is always fun. It's always fun. She's okay, because you're on camera now, Z. It's always fun. Michelle, there you go. Got it, Michelle. Michelle's going to dominate conversation now. To think about what could have triggered something, right? What could have triggered us to think more? Because once you start thinking more, you need to think more, then you're going to be demanding, you know, that the nature's going to be selecting for it, so you're going to end up with bigger brained people. So what could be causing us to think more? And for this part, the cerebral cortex, to really develop, I've got some clues and hints for us, but just before I give you the clues and hints to the way I'm thinking about it, and others have gone this direction before too. You know, anything strike you? Yeah, twice.
Like changing conditions in the environment that would necessitate like thought for survival.
Yeah, we got to figure something out.
Yeah.
Things are changing. Yeah, are you thinking of anything in particular, or
The Ice Age.
the Ice Age maybe?
Are you asking anatomically?
I'm asking what caused it to happen, maybe before anatomically, but if you're talking about something other than this anatomical difference, you are talking about
Well,
other.
I mean, we mentioned
Yeah.
earlier in class that in evolution we talked about the cerebral cortex increased in size after we became bipeds and use our hands to free up more. So we
Yes.
need less of our brain to move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, now, say the last phrase there.
We needed less of, we had more brain to use for other things than just simply moving around and controlling our rhythm because we have free hands to do other things.
Yeah, right. That's the direction I was thinking. That's right. And it could have been triggered. The bipedalism could have been triggered by the change in environment. No. A lot of people think that it was. Right. The reason. I mean, can you guys think about the reason that we needed to be upright? What's that? Yeah, well, when apes run, they run on all fours, pretty much.
It's more efficient. Like humans are the most effective long distance runners in the world.
Yes.
And can travel long distances on foot.
Yep.
Further than any other animals.
Yep. You're leaning forward just a little bit. You're upright, and you can go a long distance that way. You can also see further in the savannah. You might go upright for that to see on the savannah when you've left the jungle, and now you're trying to see long distances. So that might have gotten you up a little bit but your long distances between a drier patches. So you're having to cross drier patches between patches of jungle. Yeah.
Going off what he was saying about our way we walk is efficient. There's 3 types of gaits like walking. I don't remember what they are, but ours is the most efficient because of the way the perpendicular forces are.
Yeah.
In our legs.
Yeah.
So we use less energy by like a substantial amount.
Yes.
Compared to other animals.
Yeah. And we can cool, I think, a little easier that way. There's some other things that are leading to the hairlessness, and we could go on and on with the kind of hunting that they did too, when they're sort of outlasting the prey with long distance running. But if you're thinking about having your hands free, now you're upright, and you're having your hands free as you walk long distances, right? You can carry things.
You can make things.
Like food, you can make things. While you're walking even?
Like hand axes, you know. Work on your hand axe while you're
Yeah.
walking around.
But even before hand axes, this might have happened, so that, because hand axes you gotta be, no, you could. I mean, you think about it, you can chip away or stuff like that if you're walking. But one of the, go ahead.
Language comes about.
Okay, so how would the language come back? How would the language?
You can use your hands.
Yeah.
You're using your hands for
You
gestures?
ever talk
That's
to an
right.
Italian?
What's that?
How did the Italian lose his arms? I don't know, he couldn't tell me, you know.
How did the Italian lose his arms? I don't know, he couldn't tell me. That's right. That's good. Yeah, right? I mean, that might have been, you've got more to do. You can gesture that way. Yeah. What might have given us time to think, or what could have increased variations in our experience that would give us more to think about, right? So we've got, hey, we got to figure out what we're going to do with the Ice Age, or hey, we got to figure out what we're going to do with the drought that's created the savanna now the way it is. Or what could have increased our ability to manipulate our experience intentionally, giving us more control over what we're thinking about. Increasing our ability to manipulate our experience intentionally. That's the hand axe. That's even just carrying something. That's even carrying something and turning it over in your hands as you walk mile after mile. Right? You know that thing, that object, 20 miles later. You know, you're very familiar with it. And you maybe begun to have thoughts about it, about what to do. But you're manipulating it, and manipulation is related to George Herbert Mead's notion of being able to manipulate actions and interaction to create meaning. Manipulation is key. It's part of variation, part of novelty, creating energy and meaning. So correlates of bipedalism, yeah, we can note these. Walking distance and time, right? You've got time on your hands and in your hands. Time with your hands free. For holding hands. Holding hands at midnight. Beneath the starry sky. It's a good song, okay? It's a nice song. It's a nice song. It's a nice work if you can get it. You can get it if you try. It's the rest of that song. We'll sing later. For carrying things, right? Going back to Raquel's point. And fiddling with them. Manipulating them, turning them around. Maybe thinking about your gestures too. But that's Mead on manipulation and meaning. 1934 is when he published that. But I'll remind you guys again, I don't know if I've reminded you this lately, okay? George Herbert Mead, his most famous book, Self and Society, was published by his students, put together his lectures and published the book for him. Stop mentioning that. Fresh credit. Oh, you get that much credit. You get an A. Publish the book on our lectures. Yeah, for imagining what you're holding while you walk, right? Okay, so attention, let's go back to attention. Attention and information processing. Yeah, how might attention, attending to something, being able to focus on something, help you process information about it? Focusing your attention on it would help you process it.
You're blocking out other things that you're trying to
Yeah, you're blocking out other things that could distract you. Right? Yep. So here's another quote from Koch. Attention is evolution's answer to information overload. The brain deals with this deluge of data by selecting a small portion for information processing. Blocking out stuff. Right? The brain's got to block out stuff. You can't think about the crunching gravel under your feet step after step after step. It'll drive you nuts. You know it will, right? Or your foot, or, whatever. You got to block it out. You got to focus.
Stop reminding me that you dropped
Stop. Keep reminding you, Wes, how your foot is in agony. And so that's important to us for developing consciousness as a means of processing information. So consciousness is a form of information processing. And damn it, that book I brought in the other day and I showed Desjardins, I said, hey, Steve, look, here's a book that this guy says, the universe is a quantum computer. He says the universe is processing information all the time. What is it processing? Where is it doing that? And then people say, us, we're what's being processed. We are the information that's getting created by the quantum computer. It starts out with quantum universe. But consciousness also is sort of computer. I mean, we are processing information. And focused attention gives us stability. Focusing on it, it stabilizes and makes precepts consistent. And thinking about it, so you got that thing that you're thinking about, the stone in your hand, and you're beginning to connect it to other things that you've got to do later in the day, and what could it become, and or just thinking about, that picture, what could I do with that picture? I remember once lying on my couch and I never laid on my couch in the kitchen in this area, but I did one day. I was sitting there resting, and I was looking at the ceiling, and I just sort of turned over the ceiling and the wall. I said, well, what if I could do, and I just came up with an idea of putting tiles, a sort of string of tiles along the wall, and to decorate the wall, and it did. I like it. People say they like it. You're making those connections, those possibilities. It creates meaningfulness. Right? So the more connections you have, the more meaningful it is. So what are we likely to attend to? What are we likely to think about, usually? What are we likely to think about? Things that are well, there's always that. But other than that, sorry.
Things that use one of your senses.
Yeah, things that you like that use your senses. So like what? Like
that, but also,
like that.
No, but like that photo that you were talking about. You'd pay more attention to it if you were like in that photo, or if that photo was like, if you look at that and you remember the smell that you smelled during that time, or like you were eating something, or you were with someone that you cared about, so different parts of your brain start firing.
I was really, really tired that day, or I was really happy that day because, or yeah, so important sort of vivid physical experiences maybe, or also just important meanings to you, like those people are important to me. Yeah. What connections are we likely to make as we're thinking about something? We're likely to connect it to things that are also important to us, or things that we've seen a lot, things that we know well, maybe because it would allow novel sort of connections. You probably wouldn't connect it to something new and small and irrelevant, right? You don't want to go there. You have nothing invested in that. So you're connecting it to things that are important to you. And attending or thinking about the precept, how might we be doing it? So what does thinking look like, feel like, sound like? Can you guys describe it? I mean, can you think about sort of what thinking is? What are you doing? I mean, how would you describe it to somebody who, okay, what is thinking? What is it like? What do you feel like when you're thinking? It's tough. What do you think, Zeke? You going to phrase something?
It kind of feels like I'm translating.
Huh.
Because I know, especially since whenever I'm talking to a student who's from a different part of the city, or a different part of the state, or the world, I'm thinking about how they're speaking, and exactly, I'm basically thinking about their accent or their dialect, and then I'm translating it into
what you understand?
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
Sorry, I'm being too obvious. Right, well, no, I think that's a good idea. I mean, it's an interesting idea, and it makes sort of sense to me that you'd be thinking is sort of, and processing information is sort of putting it in other terms
Yes. Terms that I can understand.
that you're more familiar with, that
Yeah.
you're more comfortable with. Yeah, yeah. Right.
I think I just missed this, but what is the precept?
The precept is what you're thinking about. So,
Oh.
like, I'm thinking about the remote control. That's my precept. Yeah. But I like the idea of translating, sort of, or interpreting, maybe an event. If you're thinking about what you're going to do later today, if you're thinking about the meet tomorrow or something, if you're thinking about a race, would you think about it in words? Would you think about it in images? Like a film? Sort of a sequence of images, sort of? Yeah, I would think so.
What we were talking about in our slight class was when people think about where your mind is, most people say that it's like somewhere in front of your face. Because that's you think in images or know about people that were born blind. But they think their mind is somewhere close to like their ears, because that's where they would sense the world.
And that is interesting. Yeah, yeah. They would locate it near their ears. That's right, because that's where the sensory input is. I think we could say both. I mean, do you guys hear things when you're thinking sometimes? Do you ever hear music? And you're humming along to it sometimes. You're hearing the big orchestra, the big band behind you as you sing to yourself or something like that. That song that you know. So it could be sequences of sound, sequences of images. I don't know about y'all, but when I'm going to sleep and I'm sleepy and I can tell I'm about to fall asleep, I see more images. But if I'm going to have a hard time falling asleep, I know I'm going to have a hard time falling asleep, I can tell because I'm hearing music and I'm like singing along with the music, and I know I'm not going to be able to fall asleep. Anybody else like that? No? Okay. Well, I may have just spoiled it for you. Now you might be. Lines of argument, I'm sure you do this. You toss and turn in bed thinking about what you should have said. Right. Oh, yeah. Strings of statements. I mean, it can be romantic. It can be like, yeah, when I see him, I'm going to tell him. And I'm going to say it. And, yeah. Anything else strike anybody about thinking? I don't think it need be, I'm glad Wes said that earlier about it doesn't need to be necessarily linguistic thought. So, I mean, one of my favorite things to think about when I'm going to sleep is sort of imagining doing something athletic. Imagining doing something real athletic that I never really do, actually. It's playing football, taking handball. I think because of the randomness, the complexity, and what? That's perspective. A lot of people do that. Come on. Yeah. So anyway. All right, so how can hierarchy help us process information? Love this, man. Love this. Don't tell me cognition doesn't have to do with complexity and order. And order. Instead of everything being the same, we're gonna make it a little bit more complex. We're gonna differentiate stuff and make connections between the differentiations. It's going to be hierarchical. I mean, it's downright corporate, some of this stuff that Koch is talking about here, right? Examples, well, division of labor, right, is more sort of efficient for processing information. Accountability, well, we got to know who's responsible for that here or there. Planning. Okay, you plan the wedding, the ceremony. I'll plan the rehearsal dinner. Mom will take care of this, and chunking when we're remembering things, right? By remembering chunks of things. Reading is the same way. When you're reading chunks of words as opposed to word by word, can help process the information. So there we are. Okay, that's hierarchy right there at the neuronal level, right? At the cognitive level. Now, Koch talks about this in his book. He didn't talk about it with you guys in your reading. But he talks about concept neurons. Have you guys heard about concept neurons? So it's different neurons. It can be located sort of in different parts of the brain, but they all light up for that concept generally. And they light up for it when you're looking at different sort of pictures that are different individual things, but it's the same concept. In fact, it's not even a coalition as much as you might think, an abstract sort of center for it. Concept neurons are higher order. This is just notes. This is my paragraph for you, right? To sort of remember, right? Concept neurons are higher order organizers, which make it less necessary to use so many neurons to represent something, right? And so having concept neurons increases the hierarchical organization and the efficiency of information processing. Like categorizing things. So what is that? Is that a lion, or is that just something less dangerous? Matching, connecting.
Are they different than mirror neurons, or are they the same thing as mirror neurons?
Mirror neurons are different, I believe. Do you want to tell us that way?
Well, I mean,
What about mirror?
basically what you described would be like essentially mirror neurons. I just don't know what it is.
Okay, I'll have to check. Maybe they are the same thing. I know that he talked about them too, which is why I think maybe they're not the same. Maybe some mirror neurons fulfill the function of concept neurons.
Yeah.
I should check. Because I think mirror neurons might be a more common term, but I know he uses it. Anyway, so how might hierarchy help processing? Well, it simplifies things, right? You're the head of an organization. You don't have to know every detail of the organization in order to make efficient decisions about what needs to be done, because you're simplifying things. You're focusing your attention, right, on the main details. Your coarse graining is another term that's used for this. Backing up. And didn't Jardins talk about coarse graining? He did a little bit. Yes, okay, good. That makes me want to write coarse graining here in parentheses, since you've already got that in your notes under simplification. It lets you get up to a higher level of making a different sort of kind of decision, with less detail oriented at that level. You're reducing the noise. Love this, love the noise reference, okay? Because the signal and the noise, right? The less noise there is, the clearer the signal is, right? So you're getting rid of the extraneous information and focusing on what you want to. That doesn't mean, though, that you're going to make a good decision necessarily, because you could be going in a direction that you can't see at that point that is going to crash the system, because you've been simplifying things the wrong way. Obsessing on calories as you try to lose weight so much that eventually you're counting calories in toothpaste. Is there calories in toothpaste? That's a common pattern for people who have disorders, so watch out for that kind of thing. Due to this simplification, right, and streamlining, less noise, more of a clear signal, you can be more precise with your operations, right? So there's increased precision. Less energy needed. The executive can go golfing, and does. Plenty, and lets her underlings, hopefully it's a her once in a while, do the riffraff of the stuff, because they've got it so streamlined. She does. Makes the possible connections clearer as you think about something. But maybe fewer are entertained because you may be oversimplifying. So that's always a possibility here. Okay. What might make some topics more interesting than others? What makes you like some things more than others? What makes you care about some things more than others? Okay, and here's where I'm getting to my stuff with Mark Godrich on meaningfulness. And this is just formalizing. You don't have to write this down, but you've already got the main variables here. That is something that's meaningful is these three things piled up. And we computed this for the agents in our agent-based model, which I'll show you guys at some point, maybe next class, maybe the one after that. The frequency of encounters with the issue. So you've got these little agents floating around in computer space, and how often they've encountered somebody else who knows about that issue, well, that's something they've seen a lot. If the ratings are consistently around the same, they feel more confidently about it. Like, you guys know The Godfather, whether that's a good movie or not, don't you? You've heard about The Godfather, right? You know it's a decent movie, right? Right? You know about that, Or Breaking Bad, right? You know Breaking Bad is quality, even if you've never seen it, right? Even if it's too dark for us. Impact, the social impact of the issue, how much it relates to things that are important to you, that you've seen frequently, that are consistent. If it relates to a lot of them, it has high impact. And those things, this is basically an equation for meaningfulness. To begin to explain clumping. So things clump around those issues. You'll tend to think of a lot of things in terms of calories if you start to diet and get obsessed on that, or in terms of softball if it's softball season, or in terms of the MCAT if it's time to take an exam or something like that. Everything just sort of goes around that, and your thinking and consciousness sort of revolves around that. Okay. All right, here we are. I was worried we weren't going to get to the diagrams. Ready for some diagrams? Blow you away. All right. Ready? I don't think I'm ready. Maybe we ought to. Okay, let's. Okay. No, you have to break early. Yeah, he wasn't ready. Oh, we have to break early. Okay, no. This is the basic format that I'm going to use. I maybe should tilt them over, and so they're doing something different, like Chaison's diagram of species evolving. They make a change, they go up, and then they plateau. Change, and then they go up, and they plateau. Change, and they go up, and they plateau. I mean, if I were trying to match that, I would do it like this. But I'm sort of getting at this expanding out to take in a deep breath, fresh air, and then you're processing it in your body, and then you're blowing out the waste. And it's like breathing, going in and out. And it gets to a basic sort of process that I think drives complexity. You're attracted to shared information. Things in general are attracted to other agents of energy that share certain information. Information is simplified as they begin to interact, and they start to interact faster, which is the tighter diagrams. Other things that might interact with them are kept out because they can't interact as well as those that share that information. Then they burn that stuff up. That novelty is gone. Those gradients are gone. There's a decline of novelty, and the things begin to scatter more. But now they're scattering with a new combination of what they've learned from the other agents, in effect, what they've picked up, those particles have picked up. And so they'll meet in a new way other things. Then there's new simplifications and new selections based on fluency of information processing. Now that's pretty abstract. This is the most abstract one, but it keeps on going. There's this outward for novelty, inward for processing the information. Outward for gaining the information, inward for assimilating it and processing it, backwards and forwards. Now here is us today talking about perception and thought, in a sense. I know it's wordy, but attraction to shared information guides your encounters with the environment. You're looking for things that you would understand. So your nerves are sharing certain aspects of the environment, and neurons are sharing the information when nerves activate and turn. I think I've got my language confused. I've got to correct that. I have to review this. As neurons become code for the environment, you're discriminating as attention neurology is focused on neurons over nerves, and we discriminate against sensory input. That's that. I don't want everything. I just want the things that relate to what I'm thinking about, to this party in here. But then, you're done thinking about that. You're moving on to other things that are interesting to think about. Going back and getting new things, open to more sensory information. But it's based on what you were thinking about, right? So that train of thought is still there. And you're coding more, increasing in speed, and only certain sets of neurons sharing certain information with you and going on. And then there's another one with chain of thoughts. Maybe I should sort of, I don't want to sort of overwhelm you here. Well, let's see. As you encounter information in the environment, you respond to that. Yeah, this is maybe a better fit for us today. You respond to that which is most meaningful to you. having the most information or energy. You describe it to yourself, sort of what Z was, you're describing it to yourself, putting it in your own terms, an understanding of it based on what you already know, translating it a bit. And you enjoy that feeling of your knowledge resembling, of that knowledge resembling your knowledge to integrate that new understanding. I got to clean that up. The value of the fit declines, though. So, okay, I explained that, but okay, I've explained it. Okay, now I know it. Okay, and you're looking for something else to think about and to process. You're turning outward for more novel things. You're circulating in your mind or in your environment with fits for your new state of knowledge to feel knowledge state affect, which is the sense of, oh, I know that a little better now. Oh, I get it. Yeah. You describe that new fit to yourself. Right? What that is? Oh, yeah, what that is. And you enjoy that feeling of focus on that feeling of reassembly with now more pieces involved. So that's why there are 2 layers here to represent a bit more depth to your thought as it moves forward. So these are sort of your sensory inputs here, these orange arrows. So as you're opening up, you're getting information from outside and maybe bringing them in to your head and thinking about it. And these are also tighter here because it might move faster and faster as you get in a train of thought. Yeah. Any questions on that? Sort of get what I'm getting at a little bit? See that? I asked my 7th grade son if he got it when I presented this. He was sitting in on a talk I did this summer in Ecuador. He said, oh yeah, I got that. I'm not sure he was telling the truth, though. I've got other diagrams which I'll simplify for us. Now, looking at these now as we look at them here, it is awfully wordy is my take. But in general, I want you to get the openness to things and then translating them. I like the idea of translating them that Steve was talking about. And other input is then discriminated against, right? That's not getting into the party through the thalamus for cognition. And you're keeping stuff at bay. If you can't relate to that shared information as sensory input, you're not going to get in there, right? When I go on my run later today, I'm only going to be thinking about certain things because they're salient meanings for me. They're significant meanings for me. The odds are that I'm going to be thinking about, World War I are pretty low. Of course, I've said it now, so maybe I don't. But so that's how I'm thinking that it works and how complexity builds, and we build it based on the principles of entropy, sort of pulling stuff apart, but then things with sort of gravity to them, meaningfulness, pulling them in. Okay? Any questions on that? We're good? Clear as a bell? Okay, more or less, right? Okay, good guys, thanks. We'll stay tuned to your email. I'll send you out the next reading.
That stuff this weekend, you said it was the Robinsons?
That stuff is it's actually, yeah, the LA Film Prize is what to search on. LA Film Prize. Robinson might have some stuff for us. They'll probably have a link to it there. 1 paragraph on how it relates to, entropy, complexity, order, how it's fun to make order out of a weird film, how to figure out a weird film, what it's about. Yeah, that'd be good.
So mental swimming.